Game 1 for all the Big 12 teams have wrapped up in basketball. We're going to break them down a little bit. So first off, before we get into these little breakdown of games, I'm not going to go super in-depth, but I want to congratulate every single Big 12 team for getting a win, except for TCU, who lost to New Orleans. That was actually quite embarrassing for the conference, I think. But no, honestly, from the games that I watched, I did not get to watch all of them, but from the ones that I did, it was a very solid performance overall, I thought. I am going to go through a little bit of some power rankings as well. Not even necessarily power rankings, just, and obviously you can take this with a grain of salt because pretty much every team except for one team, which was, well, I guess two teams, Arizona and BYU, played, not very good opponents. Some lower level league schools. So I'm going to go through rankings at the end of this, but we're going to start with just looking over and see who won the games, what were the scores and stuff like that. So first off, we're going to talk about Arizona, and I meant to do this before, so I'll have to do it really quick here. Arizona did win. It was 93 to 87. Koa Pete. Oh my goodness. That was an unbelievable performance from Koa Pete. I mean, that was honestly probably one of the better, from a one-person standpoint, that was honestly one of the better games that I've ever watched. That dude is a baller. Like, he's a freak. And I'm not putting down BYU and AJ DeBinsta when I say this, but a lot of the hype was around AJ DeBinsta this year for a very good reason, because AJ DeBinsta also performed very well against Villanova. But Koa Pete, 34 points in that game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. But that was amazing. And I'm going to be honest, Arizona overall together as a team, again, I know, take these games with a grain of salt because you're not, well, most of them. Arizona obviously played Florida, though, who, if we don't remember, Florida won the Natty last year. So this is what I put. I know this is game 1. I know that there's a lot of games to go to. I know that there's a lot of games before Big 12 play comes around. But Arizona, to me, they could, obviously, I mean, I think Arizona is by far one of the best teams in the conference. Again, from what we've seen so far. And this is also another thing to keep in mind. I did not watch any other scrimmages besides Iowa State's. If you're new to this channel, I am an Iowa State fan, so I do have a little bit more bias on them. But I do still cover all of the Big 12 teams as well. But yeah, Arizona looks like a very, very, very talented team from what I saw. I think, honestly, I hate to say this, but I'm just going to put this out there right now. If it changes, oh well. I don't really care if it changes. But I think Arizona could run the Big 12. Again, I know it's game 1. I know it's a little early to be talking about stuff like that, but I mean, again, just from what we saw against Florida, I mean, Arizona, and they were down 12 at one point. I think at one point it was like 32 to 20. Which is not obviously a huge deficit by any means, but that was Arizona looks like a very, very, very talented team. So yeah, next one we're going to get to is Cincinnati. I really only have 3 games that I'm going to talk super in depth about. Some of these I did not get to watch. Either I was watching Iowa State or Arizona, Florida, or just another game. But Cincinnati defeated Western Carolina 94 to 63. I did look at the stats for this game. It looks like they spread out the attack offensively. They had 3 starters with 18 points and one bench player with 10. I look for Cincinnati to pick up where they left off last year. Kind of a middle of the pack team in the Big 12. But that's not going to be an easy win for anyone in the Big 12. By far. I mean, it is. Anyone who has to go to Cincinnati is going to get tested, and Cincinnati I think could put up a real fight against, your Arizonas, your Kansas, your Iowa State, your BYU, Houston. Cincinnati, I think, is going to be right there with some of those teams. Next game I'm going to talk about is my Iowa State Cyclones defeated Farley Dickinson 88-50. Milan Momcilovic, oh my goodness, it was so good to see the amount of threes that he hit. 29 points. He does this like every year is the problem. And this is his freshman and sophomore year. He did the same thing in game one. And I think from an Iowa State, obviously I'm a fan, so from a fan perspective, I think it's how can you keep that up? Obviously, you're not going to score 29 points every single game. Obviously, you're probably not going to even score 20 plus points per game, especially under the style of play that Iowa State has. But I think more so, again, from a fan perspective, is how can you keep the consistency up is the biggest thing that Iowa State fans are looking for. And also, Kylian Touré, freshman from France, very, very well impressed with how he played. And Touré and Lipsy, I mean, that could be a lethal duo by the time that we get to Big 12 play. Again, I know I just said this, but it's early in the year. But Lipsy and Touré, that duo could be huge by the time Big 12 play comes around, and it probably will have to be. I mean, because when you look at Iowa State, obviously you've got Heisey coming off the bench. You've got, a couple big guys that are coming in as well. Plata looks a little slow right now, which very normal for a lot of freshmen to do their freshman years. They're going to be a little bit slower just coming out of high school ball. So very natural, of course. Next game we got is Houston defeated Lehigh 75-57. Houston, same story every year, kind of same with Iowa State. Very strong defensive team under Sampson. Emmanuel Sharp with 24. Sharp, I can't remember if he's a junior or sophomore this year, or maybe he's a senior. I could be wrong. But Sharp is a very talented guard. And between Sharp and Uzan obviously coming back as well, Houston's going to be the same way they were last year. Obviously, they're looking to make back-to-back natty appearances. Could Arizona get in their way? Could Iowa State get in their way? I think there's a chance more for Arizona. We'll get to that in the rankings here in just a little bit. Kansas defeated Green Bay 94-51. Not a whole lot to say here again. Badunga with 23. Darren Peterson, the freshman, also with 21. Also a very impressive performance from yet another freshman. I'm going to say this before I go on to the next little game. When I was looking through these games a little bit, I guess maybe this is just because I haven't watched, I think I've watched 2 games outside of the Big 12, and one of them was Iowa, because I'm an Iowa State fan. I wanted to see how good Iowa is this year, which, side note, Iowa is a really talented team this year. But the amount of freshmen in this conference right now that are seemingly elite is unbelievable. And I haven't paid attention to a whole lot of other conferences, so the SEC might be bringing in a bunch of freshmen that are really good. I don't know. But from what I've seen so far from freshmen, it looks like the Big 12 has their fair share, of course, because the Big 12 is the best league in basketball. Baylor survives the UTRG scare, 96-81. I think UTRG was up by as many as 14, I want to say, maybe. I've got a lot of defensive concerns with Baylor right now. Again, I know it's game 1. You're still figuring things out. So the first game obviously doesn't tell us everything, but it tells us small things. And I think that defensive concern could definitely grow over the next couple of weeks getting into Big 12 play. So we'll have to see how they end up being. And I think Baylor, not the legitimate preseason poll, but I think Baylor, before the preseason poll, when people were just talking about who was going to be ranked, I think Baylor was listed on them a few times. So that'll be interesting to see where they get to. UCF survived Hofstra scare, 82-78. Riley Kugel with 19 points in that one. Don't have a lot to say about this. I did not watch this game. If you've noticed, every team has one so far that I've mentioned, except for now, which is TCU, who lost to New Orleans 78-74. David Punch with 19 points. I got to look up something really quick before I move on. Jamie Dixon is still the head coach. I don't really pay attention to TCU that much, so I had to make sure. But Jamie Dixon, I know it's your first game of the season, but could it possibly be his time at TCU? I think there's a chance. I think there's a real chance. Utah defeated San Jose State 85-74. Traore, hopefully I'm saying that right, with 23 points. These next few I'm not going to say a whole lot about, but Colorado beat Montana State 84-78. Isaiah Johnson with 24 points. We've got 2 more games to get to, and then we're going to go, we've got 5 more games, 6 to get into. Wow, I cannot read my computer apparently. BYU survives Villanova scare. I think it was 71-66. I thought I wrote the score down for that, but I did not. Like I just mentioned, Dubinsta with 21 points. Very solid again from freshman standpoint, of course, obviously being the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. West Virginia survives Mount St. Mary's scare 70-54. Lots of turnovers for West Virginia. I will say Mount St. Mary's also had a lot of turnovers as well. And Jasper Floyd for West Virginia had 25 points. I watched the first half of this game, I think. Just a lot of turnovers. I mean, these teams were trading turnovers back and forth for a little bit there. So I'll be interested to see. And obviously West Virginia, new coach coming in this year. But it'll be really interesting to see how they progress over the season. Texas Tech beats Lindenwood 98-60. I don't have much to say about their Texas Tech's a really good basketball team. They're going to be just fine in the conference. And then Kansas State beats UNC Greensboro. This was a tale of two halves. It was 93-64 was the final score. Kansas State, though, was down 34-33 at halftime. And then they scored 60 points in the second half. PJ Haggerty with 27 points. So Kansas State definitely much of a turnaround in the second half. They looked a lot better in the second half. Obviously, a lot of defensive and offensive adjustments when you're down by 1 to UNC Greensboro at home. Then Oklahoma State beats Oral Roberts 95-71. Victorious Miller with 21 points. I think Oklahoma State's going to have another, not contender, but a competitor for sure. They're definitely going to be a solid team, middle of the pack team in the Big 12. And then Arizona State beats Southern Utah 81-64. Anthony Johnson with 17 points. It's Arizona State. Hopes are never high for Arizona State, I'm going to be honest. So they're going to be a bottom of the conference team for sure. Now we're going to get into our rankings. Again, this is just one game. Nobody plays until today, technically, because this will be out tomorrow. But again, take these with a grain of salt. These are obviously going to change week to week, depending on how much I end up talking about basketball for the Big 12, which will probably be a lot, at least over the next couple of weeks for sure. And obviously, after football wraps up, it'll be only basketball. But my rankings I have, number 1, Houston fans, hopefully you're not watching, but Arizona I have as the number 1 team in the conference right now. Again, I'm also kind of just basing this off of, I just beat the national champions. So, and again, Pete looks unbelievable. Very fun player to watch. Very fun offense to watch, for sure. So I have Arizona at 1, followed by number 2 Houston. Again, same team that they were last year. They're going to be, again, picking up right where they left off. Number 3 I have is Kansas. Not a whole lot to say. I will be honest, though, I kind of thought about putting them lower just because I feel like Kansas gets put so high every single year, and then they underperform their expectations. So if you're watching this and you think Kansas should be lower, I could agree with that. I could see them being back at 5, 6, maybe even 7. Number 4 I have is Texas Tech. Not a whole lot to say about here. I think they're a very solid team. They're also going to be right back where they left off from last year. Number 5 is BYU. I think BYU is number 2 in the preseason poll for the conference. Maybe even, they might have been number 1, actually. No, Houston was number 1. I think BYU is number 2. Texas Tech was 3. BYU, I think Villanova's a good team, but I don't think Villanova is like a Big 12 caliber team. And so, again, I'm basing this off of one game. So that's kind of why I put BYU down to number 5. 6, I have Iowa State. Kind of same story, especially with Iowa State obviously losing Curtis and Keyshawn. Replacing them, again, I think Killian Toure is going to be a huge part of that. But I think more for Iowa State is what can you do with the guys from last year that you still have in your team? How can they improve this year to, push Iowa State forward into the win column again in conference play? Because obviously in the Big 12, it's a very tough stretch. So yeah, number 7, I have it, Cincinnati. I said this just a second ago. I think they're going to be a very solid team. And I'll say this actually before I move on with Cincinnati, but the top 6 teams are very, very top heavy. And I think all of these teams could seriously be in contention for Elite 8. Definitely Sweet 16. Elite 8 for sure. And, we'll just have to see what we do this year in the March Madness tournament with Big 12 teams. Obviously, that's a long ways away. We're one game into the season, but have to, mention it a little bit. So, and then I have Baylor at number 8. And I could see just with Baylor how they played their first game, I could see them going down a spot or two. Number 9 is Oklahoma State. Number 10, Kansas State. Number 9, Oklahoma State. I want to talk about them a little bit, actually, because Oklahoma State was not a good team last year, and I think they're much, much improved this year. I don't see them being like a Cincinnati team necessarily, where they could give, a Kansas maybe Kansas. I don't see them giving like a Texas Tech or Houston or Arizona or Iowa State a run for the money, especially if it's away. On their home court, maybe a little bit, but I don't see them doing, something like Cincinnati or Baylor even could do. I don't see that. Kansas State, I kind of wish I would have put K-State over Oklahoma State in this, because I could kind of see Kansas State doing that a little bit more to the better teams in the conference. So I will switch those two. So Oklahoma State 10, K-State at 9. And then we have the bottom 6, which I think are all just flat out. None of these teams they're going to be competing for the worst in the conference. And there is this, when you look at my rankings and when you look at the teams that we have in the conference this year, you have your top 6, which Arizona, Houston, Kansas, Texas Tech, BYU, and Iowa State. It's very top heavy. All those teams should be ranked throughout the entire season. And then you have your Cincinnati and Baylor, which I think could find their way into the rankings eventually. Possibly after like the Thanksgiving week tournaments, depending on how they do there. And then you have Oklahoma and K-State, which are kind of like on the third tier, so to speak. And then you have Utah at 11, UCF at 12, West Virginia at 13, Colorado 14, Arizona State 15, and TCU 16. The bottom of the bottom is at the very bottom. Like they're not good teams, and which I honestly, as of right now, again, I know like West Virginia is another team that we're talking about. Like they have a new coach that could be good by the time Big 12 season rolls around. Which great, hopefully they are. Because obviously we want to see as many tournament teams in from this conference as possible. But I right now do not see it. And honestly, all of these 6 teams you could put in different orders. Because there's probably going to be some, I guess probably not, but there could be like a Colorado fan watching this and like, I think we're better than UCF. I think we're better than West Virginia. Or there could be a TCU fan that's like, I know we just lost, but I still think we're better than West Virginia, giving up however many turnovers they did to Mount St. Mary's. So I don't know. But again, this is just after game 1. So take these with a grain of salt. Obviously, this is going to change a lot. But I still think the conference overall is going to be, very solid, right back where we left off from last year. I think your top 6 teams are almost a lock already for the March Madness tournament. And then Cincinnati, I think you could almost say is a lock as well. Baylor could possibly sneak into there. I don't see Baylor doing it right now, but I think they could. I think Baylor it's going to be really important these next 3-4, basically before conference. If they can have a solid non-conference, then I think they'll end up being okay. Same thing with Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Everyone else after that, I don't really see anyone else getting into, a position where they could possibly be fighting for a possible, seed in the tournament at an at-large bid. But it's the Big 12. It's the best conference in basketball. So there's definitely a shot there. When you're playing in a league as talented as the Big 12 is. So yeah, but that's all that I have for today. I will hopefully be back sometime this week, which would be Friday, I guess, because I want to talk about BYU and Texas Tech a little bit and football again, because I haven't done that for 3 episodes now, I think. So yeah, I'm hoping to stay with this like 2 to 3 week post a week, not 2 to 3 weeks post, but 2 or 3 posts a week. Hopefully we'll stay a little bit more consistent now. But yeah, so that is all the time we have in this one. See you guys on the next one. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Big 12 Deep Dive, the podcast where we break down everything Big 12 football and basketball.